Early this month, Reiza dropped their Automobilista 2 new GT3 content, which I decided I'll try out at the old Kyalami first. On this, I know the sim sort of. I haven't driven it a lot, but I do kind of know it. So I went for the Mercedes GT3. I want to get the driving out the way. Then we'll talk about the sim, its relevance now, and where does it fit in terms of the pecking order, considering iRacing, Assetto Corsa Competizione, etc. have the GT3 market sewn up. So off I went. It was the first race, old Kyalami and the Mercedes GT3. I qualified 5th. The AI, not very good starters. Not too bad. I must say I'd driven the car and I was quite impressed with the physics. I've never driven the real version of this car, but it was quite believable for me in terms of just the way the body roll, everything. I must say I was super impressed initially. So I thought, let's take it in a race and maybe we can show you just what I'm talking about. Very aggressive car to drive. You have to really drive it. The force feedback, everything was plug and play, I must say. There was no tinkering or anything. With this car, the setup was straight out the box. I just reduced the fuel to do a 10-minute race. But yeah, it really feels believable on the limit. One of the better Mercedes GT3s I've driven, I must say. I really love the way they use the use of the curbs. The transition from curb to back to the tar is really good. You can really hit the curbs and it feels realistic. The transitions, like I said, either way just feel super realistic as far as I was concerned. In fact, among the best curb handling I've felt. And then of course the sound, if I may just say, I would probably up the tire sound and the surface sound, I think it is, to about 100. It's on default at 75. I kind of want to hear the squeal and all those sort of senses, the hearing, the visual, the foot, they all combine and to create this very believable and very immersive sim experience, I must say. And there's a certain slightly different technique to driving this sim. It's very believable because you really have to keep on turning. You're not just point it once and squirt. You've got to really work the car and find the apex. You hit the apex, it's good. And this Mercedes just felt super good. I mean, it ticked all the boxes for me, and I really felt I was in a race, and I felt I was working. It's very immersive in that way. So much so that when I was practicing, I twice ran out of fuel. So yeah, for me, I was excited. I think this is good. They've made progress. Reiza are famous for their stock car sims, the Brazilian Stockcars, and they really did a very good job with that. But this is different. This is a totally different game engine, etc. During the race, I slowed down a bit because I was just out there on my own, and I got eaten up by a gaggle of Porsches. So that just shows you there has to be a BOP, balance of performance, because the Porsches run together here. The Mclaren obviously is faster because it's a more recent version of a GT3. But yeah, here I am with a Porsche, and very good driving with the AI. I don't feel they really attack, but once they get ahead of you, they find some extra pace, and they seem to just be able to stay ahead, and it's nice. It's good to chase, be good for hot lapping too. I think it's good for practice, believe it or not, because the AI are quite lifelike in the way that they push and they go, and it's hard to catch them. I don't think they really attack much the humans, and I think we've also got a bit more horsepower. I mean, I've really got a very fast Mercedes here, because as you can see on the straight, I just gobble up everything else. So I found that maybe the car, I was running at 100 AI, so 100% AI, and that was the measure. So I reckon fast guys will be able to find another 1 or 2 seconds out of this car easily, and I'll probably find a second myself, because as you get used to the physics, and as I was driving it, I was really enjoying it. I must say I really had a blast with this car. Next up, Porsche 911 GT3, sure, cup car variation. I have been a passenger in one of these around Dubai Autodrome with a driver called Karim Al-Azari, very big GT3 Porsche guy in the Middle East, and a friend. Anyway, so we got in the car on the grid at the new Kyalami, because I felt the old Kyalami wasn't the right track for this. And off we go at the start again. Horrible start. McLaren's hogging in the front row. I was quickest of the Porsches. Race gets underway. Iconic Golf liveried car. Obviously they don't have the rights for the Golf, so they're just running the colors. And yeah, I tagged the McLaren in front of me, but as you can see, all the McLarens at the front, Porsches next, and then Mercedes. So again, the balance of performance will have to be adjusted if you want to run these things in a league. In terms of AI, as you see, pretty well behaved, quite aggressive, but not aggressive towards me personally as the driver, as the human driver, but they seem to be racy. And initially, I must say, when I was first testing it, it felt very unrealistic, very bouncy, like popcorn on steroids. It's not this bouncy. This thing felt very bouncy. At the same time, it rode the curbs so well. It absolutely, feels so good. And again, out the box force feedback, no tweaking, nothing. Just drove the car and was quite amazed at the senses and the perception that you get with the audio, plus the feedback, plus the visual. It really feels like it's got this incredible grip. You can see it porpoising there and really wants to hit the limit of grip, and you just kind of feel it. You just do feel that sensation, which is quite amazing. Bounces off those curbs in a very realistic way. I find it realistic because I've seen Porsche GT3s do that. They don't just hit a curb and go flying like you see in some sims. So yeah, I felt the sounds were good, probably not the best, but again, I think you got to play with the audio. I upped the surface and the tire noise, but again, very difficult to catch the guys in front. And this is one thing I've realized with this AI. Once they get ahead of you, they're very hard to beat, which is quite good. It's good, to chase them down, etc. But kind of got into a stalemate. But honestly, I was initially a bit skeptical about it, but the more I drove the car and the more I try and push it on the limit, it does have this very realistic feeling in terms of you don't always have to have the right line or hit the apex perfectly, because no one ever always does that consistently in real life. And you feel that this car, although it goes off the line, you can still bring it in and you can still save it. Very, very believable driving experience, actually, I must say. And again, trying to push it as hard as I can on a track where it would race now, which would be the new Kyalami. So yeah, I think they've done a good job with this. I mean, in terms of the physics of the car, it's very, very believable. I really like a guy like Christopher Zuchling or even Karim. I don't know if he sims, but I know Christopher Zuchling is a Porsche GT3 coach, and I'd really love him to take this car for a spin on Automobilista and give us some feedback. It's very lively, maybe a tad too lively, but I'm not going to fault it for that, because it was really a nice driving experience. Again, very immersive to the point that you run out of fuel, and just love riding the curbs. I don't know what it is about this sim. They've really got the curbs spot on for me. All in all, yeah, I liked it. I mean, I'll give my thoughts later on about the whole sort of pecking order of the sims, but this one has definitely brought GT3 into Automobilista in the best way possible. Okay, so finally the McLaren. I was looking forward to this because it was the fastest car. Obviously it's a 2019 car and the other two are 2016 cars, so there's a difference there, but a beautiful looking car, and looking forward to it because it was winning everything in the last two races. So off we went. New Kyalami again, and nice off the line. Now I'd qualified on pole, but I must be honest, I was not totally sold on the car. Maybe it's just the nuances of the car. Importantly, three different cars with three very different physics. The Porsche very different to the Mercedes, and the McLaren different to them all. I struggled to get onto the brakes. The brakes were really a problem for me out the box, so I had to play around. I think I might have played with the pressure to 80% or something, but the brakes just never felt right for me, and it showed in the race because I braked myself too many times. I just never got that balance of feeling, and I never felt the car. The car never felt to me like this, for instance, the Mercedes. The Mercedes to me was the best of the three that Automobilista put off, with the Porsche very believable, and it was really growing on me. The McLaren, although I got it on pole, but so what? I think I'm an average driver, against 100% AI. But when I got to behind this guy that I'm chasing now, I really struggled to catch him. And as you can see, again, struggling with the brakes. The car, lively, drives well, but I think because I was so trying to get this thing to stop, for me it sort of overrid it. In terms of, especially when I was comparing it to the other two that I had just driven, I felt, it just didn't feel right at low speeds. They need some work on this car in terms of just to get it right. Unless, of course, these are how McLarens handle in real life. Again, I'd love a real racing driver to get in these and actually just compare and just say, yes, it's nice, it's good, and it's quite racy. You can see I take the lead here. But they come back at me. Very clean the AI. Maybe you got to just put up the aggression a bit. I'm running them at 100%. Fast guys will probably run them bigger than that. But not a very racy experience in terms of AI. Again, lost the brakes. You got to brake a lot earlier with this McLaren, and after you've driven those other two cars, it quite doesn't make sense. So, maybe this is how they do handle, but they are really, really super quick, almost like motorbike when you're shifting up the gears. But a good car. I wouldn't say it was like I said, the Merc for me, of the three, this is not it's the third. It's on the bottom step of the podium. Top step, I'll give it to the Merc. But I tell you what, the Porsche, I got to go back to it, maybe do a Porsche Cup race, because it really feels good, maybe too good. But that's my summary of these three cars that I drove. Again, 10-minute races are good enough. 10 minutes qualifying, 10-minute races, and you really get a good impression of the car. Here, I lost it. And interesting, I didn't crash much. I mean, it's a brand new sim. In terms of brand new cars, I know this sim quite well, but it's very believable, and you feel you're driving, and that's why it was quite easy not to make mistakes that send you in the barriers, which was quite realistic, because you don't always end up in the barriers when you test cars, even though if you push them beyond the limit. So Automobilista 2, they did a good job on that. But now let's take a step back and just analyze where it stands in terms of the pecking order of sims. They've come into a very, very competitive marketplace, which I think Assetto Corsa Competizione have almost hogged in terms of preferences and who drives what. But of course, there's the iRacing factor with their GT3. Many people, including myself, struggle with the physics, although we love the concept of the community racing and the ratings and the licenses and that whole thing. They've got spot on, but there's a lot to be desired in terms of the believable driving of the car. And also, you just crash too much, and it's just not realistic in that way. But again, you can't fault the infrastructure that they have. In terms of where this sim sits, I think it's still going to be very niche. This is going to definitely open it up, because it was very much a Brazilian, let's call it boutique kind of sim, whereas now with the GT3s, it's going to definitely open up. Where it fits in the pecking order of the GT3 community, which already has Assetto Corsa Competizione and of course iRacing, it will be interesting. It'll be difficult to see them usurping them, because it's such a niche game, but this has definitely opened the door and give it a lot more relevance to a more global market. I think it would be worth watching. In terms of figures, it's not looking good. I mean, sim games compared to shoot 'em ups are just way down the pecking order. But if we have a good look at the current standings on Steam, while I was doing this video, I decided, okay, let's go and look at Steam and where the figures are, and it doesn't look very good, to be honest. If you look at the figures, you'll see that Formula 1 2020 on the 1st of November was the most popular game with online players, 11,000 of them. And then, interestingly, it was Assetto Corsa at 8,300, Assetto Corsa Competizione with 4,000, R-Factor 2 with 1,000, and Automobilista 2, as you can see, on 700 plus. So really nothing to write home about. I would say if you're an Automobilista 2, diehard and a fan, and you've had the sim for a long time, which dates back to Stockcar Brazil, I enjoyed those stock cars very much. But in terms of this, the GT3s, of course, have opened a huge door for them. How it will translate to more players, more online players, will be interesting. Offline, well, offline you need car sets and all those licensing things. And I think Assetto Corsa probably does a better job. Although I'll have to say, everyone should sample these physics. In terms of should you buy it if you're not a AMS aficionado or a fan, I say yes. If you can afford it, buy it. But the reality is that it'll probably be a hot lap sim for me, although I'll be revisiting on an ongoing basis and also watching the online and the leagues. I think it could be good within a closed community. So that's it. That wraps up my review of the GT3 cars on a MS2.